we'll just turn it down in the room.
Okay, let me see if I can change a few things here. Let's see. Are you hearing that? Or are you hearing me still?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right. So let me know if you're still having trouble hearing me. So we're going to start up front with the Morgan County portion of the discussion. If you want to join the discussion on Morgan City, we'll be starting that at 7 o'clock. So you can hang around, or you can always view this information online afterwards. So what we're going to do, we just wanted to kind of start off with something for people online and in the room, just getting a sense of who's here tonight. So if you're online, find that chat function in your Zoom toolbar and just go ahead and in the chat, just say what your first name is, and also let us know what part of Morgan you're from. And for those in the room, we'd just like to hear, kind of where everybody's from. I don't know if you want to just kind of shout out kind of the different areas that you're from.
We'll need to use a mic for that, for anybody to.
You're up, sir. On the
Well,
mic.
sure.
Press and tap it.
I'm Chris Sauer from Croydon, actually, not from Morgan, but I'm on the advisory committee, so I figured this would be a good thing to be here for. This is my wife, Michelle, right here. So,
Close to your mouth, too, so people can hear. Thank you.
We're the Warners, represent the Warner family in Mountain Green, specifically on Trappers Loop Road.
We're the Wingles, we're on the Island Road, but we're interested in the Deep Creek area.
Earl and Julie Anderson from Morgan City, Fox Point area.
Holly George from Morgan City in the Wasatch Shadows area.
I'm Lance Tyrell. I grew up in Porterville and live in Mountain Green now.
Dave and Julie Croft, we live in Peterson.
Bill Shaw, Morgan County, 70 North Morgan Valley Drive, 42-year resident.
Kelly Jackson, 300 West, been here 100 years.
Paul Springer, representing the Jackson family. We're from Star Valley, Wyoming.
Steve Gale, Morgan City.
Mark Walker, live at the end of Island Road, which is like the end of the earth for most people. So it's great down there.
My name is Todd Strong. I'm working on a project with the Jackson family over by the gun range.
Lyletta Searle, Stoddard Lane.
Tucker Jensen in Milton.
Forrest Terrell. We live, and my wife Marcy, we live in the area Hardscrabble, just not far from Porterville.
Bruce Carver, I have some interest in Morgan area.
Tammy Bowman from Peterson.
Brock Bates, grew up on Stoddard Lane, currently live in Enterprise.
Scott McMillan, I'm from Mountain Green.
Dave Pike, Milton.
And we got our back row people.
Okay, Randy Davis Sessions, Peterson.
Austin Turner, Morgan County Emergency Manager.
Robert McConnell, I live in Mountain Green.
Lane Fackrell, County Commissioner, I live in Porterville.
One more.
Bowman, Peterson on the east side of the river.
East side of the river. That's a special space. Okay, I think that's everyone in the room except for Ty Bailey, your city manager. I'm his assistant, Wanda. And back to you, Miss Lisa.
All right, thank you so much for everyone. This is it's a great turnout, and it looks like we have good representation from a lot of different areas of the community. and a lot of people online from different areas as well. We have some people from Wasatch Peaks Ranch. We have Chris Haramato with the state, someone with the library. We have Anissa with Tourism and Recreation Development, a lot of good people. Division of Wildlife, great. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out tonight. And just as a cue, whenever we have these little owls pop up during the presentation, that'll be another opportunity for interaction and feedback. We want to get your input as we're going, rather than just kind of, you know, throwing a bunch of information at you and then asking you to give feedback at the end. So we'll just jump right into it. I think Lance gave a pretty good summary about the project purpose for the general plan. Just a quick note, even though it's been branded as Morgan 2050, we're actually going to focus on the 2040 timeframe just because of the accuracy of the housing data. That has a little bit better information, more reliable information to move forward. So that's going to be the timeframe that we're looking at for the information that you'll see tonight. So as Lance mentioned, we have had a pretty good public engagement process so far with the community survey, the project website, which is morgan2050.org, online public scoping meetings, which were held in March, and then we did a series of focus groups as well. And through all of this public input, we got a ton of feedback, and we sorted through all of that and tried to hone it down into some guiding principles to give us direction moving forward and try to find the commonalities. So the guiding principles there, we ended up with 9 of them. So looking at community character, kind of protecting that rural Western small town atmosphere that everybody likes in Morgan, protecting that agricultural identity, both for, you know, the livelihood aspect of it and also that visual and lifestyle character that it provides. Protecting the natural resources. And this was definitely a common thread, and even in the previous general plans and all the small area master plans, the desire to protect the natural resources that are here and you know, protect that quality of life for residents and visitors and for the wildlife that everybody enjoys. And where growth does occur, it needs to be done right. And then balancing the demand for services and amenities with the desire for low taxes. So trying to balance the need for affordable housing and parks and roads and all of those services while trying to still keep it an affordable place to live, which is a big challenge these days. Transportation, improving that safety and connectivity for the roadways in the community. And then housing, providing a variety of housing so that people that live within the community can age in the community, maybe changing to different housing types as they age and have those options through their life cycles. Also providing options for people that want to locate to Morgan from outside areas. Economic development, serving both local residents and tourists, kind of tapping into that tourist market to help support the local economy. And then parks and recreation, providing that comprehensive connected network of trails and parks and taking advantage of the amenities and all of the cultural and historical features that you already have in the community, kind of tying those together as much as possible. So this kind of gives a rundown of all of the different types of information that we heard in the public engagement process. And so we just wanted to get your thoughts on the guiding principles. You know, if you feel, do you feel like these guiding principles, you know, maybe sum up the big kind of vision points that you see for the community moving forward? Do you think there should be any changes to these? You know, have we missed something, or are there any other ideas? And so what we're going to do is John is going to break everybody online out into 3 different breakout rooms. And the idea is just get into those little breakout rooms. They're going to be timed. It's just going to be a quick 2-minute discussion on the guiding principles. So just talk about that in your breakout rooms, and everyone in person, you can just have a conversation as a group, what your thoughts are. And then as we come together as the main group at the end of the 2 minutes, then those online, you can kind of share your thoughts in the chat just so we have a record of that. And you can always, you know, if you'd like to turn your mic on and jump into the conversation too, And then, someone in the room can maybe give us a summary of your discussion in the room as well. So we'll see if John gets everyone set out to these groups, and we'll see you kind of back in all together in about 2 minutes.
Do we have a slide of the guiding principles? That can be, so they can see.
Any thoughts?
Any of those points, 1 through 9, what struck out to you? What do you want to comment on? What would you, if there's something up there that's not, or something that's not up there that you'd like to see? Yes.
So this is me.
Can you guys hear each other? Is that okay?
Okay. I'm not representing the newspaper when I'm making these comments. This is me personally as a resident. I want to really focus on that community character. My husband is a native of Morgan, and we're afraid that it's going to grow so much that our kids won't be able to live here because it will get too big. So we want to protect that small rural atmosphere that he grew up in.
Okay, is that good?
Yes.
What else? Please, Susan.
So I'm worried about how we can, increase our tax base, because that's a big problem for our schools right now.
Yeah, our schools. My other job is I work, I'm a teacher, and our schools are like already at capacity, even though we've already added on to the high school. And so unless that tax base does increase, we're kind of stuck.
And we want to, we want to keep all this, but we also.
There it goes. Okay, so did that feel a little fast for everybody? Is that an okay amount of time?
Yes, it was really fast.
Okay. Okay, John, we better make the other rooms at least 5 minutes. We do those breakouts. So what are some thoughts that in the time that you did have in your discussion, what are some thoughts that came up? And concerns?
Lisa, I don't know if we're getting rejoined here. But it made you the host because it kicked me off. So I don't know if it doesn't sound like there's a main room.
Thanks everybody for your patience with the.
Great, so we're back.
Is everybody back?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and any thoughts on any of these guiding principles? Any that jump out more? Anything that we missed?
Our group really reinforced the first one
protecting the rural small western town atmosphere.
And Lance is going to speak for the big group here at the city.
Okay, so we had a good, quick discussion. I'm just going to read the list really quick and we can go from there. Protect the community character. Need to be able to have kids live here. Protect the small rural environment and atmosphere. Increase tax base and increase to help with school capacity. Protect long-term landowners' rights, property rights. An issue is that kids are effectively zoned out by the limited zoning. I think that's kind of the summary I'd take away from that. But we also need to include and have affordable housing. And yeah, so then our last comment was trying to balance and realizing that just to provide housing for our children, the community's children, is going to take some growth. And if we don't grow, it won't be affordable. Like, to that effect.
It's like if every generation tries to provide housing for their children, homes for their children, there's only limited space up here. And so how do you keep it rural and, so your families can come home and maybe not everyone's going to be able to live here.
And it looks like one of the online groups talked about the need to protect natural assets and resources and character while having focused areas that allow tourism and recreation development. Any other thoughts on the guiding principles kind of before those are some great thoughts.
Did anybody talk about protecting the mountains? Did anyone talk about protecting the mountains?
Our group talked about, by the time we got to talk, it was kind of over, but we did mention the importance of natural resources and wildlife and the environment.
Are we talking recreational now? Oh, all right. Are we talking recreational now? Because you're running out of space. I mean, you've got so many people coming down the river right now, and you're going to provide parking. It's another one, parking or recreational. That's the one I was looking for. And up at Lost Creek, you're attracting a lot of people. By the way, thank you for putting in the bypass road so soon for us. We could use some signs, though, that say recreational vehicles this way, and another one that says maybe local residents this way, especially coming back the other way because they've gotten used to coming through Croydon now. So I prefer it if you put some signs the other way, saying recreational vehicles that way, coming out, because they go in that way and then they come out through Croydon because they don't see any signs there. And you're running out of space already for recreation.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. And if you have additional thoughts on any of these topics as we're going tonight, those in person, you have the comment forms. You're welcome to kind of jot any ideas on that and leave them, before you leave tonight. Anybody can join the website or get on the website and submit some comments through there. So we'll keep moving through these concepts tonight and keep asking for your feedback. So we're going to have Kate jump into some demographic conditions and future projections.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate you turning the time over to me. What you can see here, there's several different sources where you can go to look at what the population projections, so what the future population of your areas are going to be. These projections right here are based on what a regional planning organization called Wasatch Front Regional Council has projected your population will be. You can see your current actual population numbers are estimated to be within the city about 4,200, within the county about 12,500, and you are going to be growing within Morgan City, doubling your numbers, and then within the county, adding about 8,000 people by the year 2040. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So this chart shows you what the population looked like in 2010 when the census occurred, and then that's the dark outline, and then the solid green shows you what the population looked like in the most recent census data. What you can see here is that over time, the age of your population within the county has remained fairly constant, except you have a couple little spots where it's decreased in the mid-career age range. So, 40s to 50s, you can see your population has decreased over time, which shows that you likely have people leaving the area for better employment and housing needs that fit their lifestyles. Let's look at the next one. So this shows you what is happening in Morgan City, and unlike the county, you have some higher spikes for this one, especially at the younger ages. It's still quite level, but you have a lot more children in the area, and then that mid-career age range is a little bit higher for them. So keeping that in mind while you're planning is important, because you can see the variety that's needed in land use, the type of housing that will be needed, and just the type of business that your citizens will want. Let's go ahead and look at the next page. So this shows you what the household sizes have been over time, and you'll notice that you're a little bit higher than Utah in general, especially in Morgan County. With Morgan County, the household size is just a little bit is quite a bit higher. Your Morgan City household size has fluctuated, kind of aligned with the economy, actually. So ages can vary that, but also the economy can affect the size of a household. Let's go ahead and look at the next sheet. This slide, I know it's kind of small to see that image, but it just shows you where the existing housing is. The red following the rainbow to purple being the most recent. Red is the oldest. That just shows you where the housing is and how old it is throughout the county and then within the city. I think we're going to be posting these slides, so if you're interested in that, that might be a good place to look for this one. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So your household incomes within Morgan are quite a bit higher than they are outside of the county. You have quite a high level of college attainment within your population, and that often aligns with that higher income level. So what this means for you is you have a potential for higher per capita spending, which means you have potential for higher sales tax base if the opportunity was there for additional retail. So that's what that shows. Let's look at the next slide.
Okay, so jumping into land use. Again, kind of a lot of these concepts focus around the idea of maintaining that community character, that agricultural and rural feel to the area. So the concept is focused around focusing growth in centers, and that's primarily in Morgan City and in the Mountain Green Town Center. Other tools that we're looking at to help support agriculture in Morgan include land preservation tools like cluster developments or conservation easements, or tools like transfer of development rights that allow some land to remain in rural use, but still allow people to also get the value out of their land. Programs and ordinances to recognize and protect agriculture, like right to farm ordinances, or ordinances that address impacts between adjacent land uses. If you have people moving in next to agricultural uses, sometimes there's a little bit of an issue there, but maybe addressing that up front. Also recognizing the history and contribution of your farms and ranches through, like the Century Farms program and other ones like that. Looking at tax credits and exemptions, having that Greenbelt Act in place really helps. Also looking at ways to form economic partnerships, promoting your local farmers and ranchers and their produce and their products through farmers markets or different events like agritourism, other opportunities like that, direct marketing, ways to support them and help them maintain their viability here in the county. Also establishing districts to protect and encourage agriculture, and then also fostering education and innovation, maybe looking at community educational farms like Wheeler Farm or like the Bastion project that's going in down in Harriman, or maybe supporting or sponsoring sustainable or alternative methods, kind of research into those options, ways to help keep doing what you're doing, but maybe in a little more sustainable way, something that might be a little easier on the land or easier, for you in the long term. Just some different strategies. And if you have any additional ideas, we would love to hear that as well. So with that focus on preserving the agricultural areas and that open space, the idea is to focus growth in these centers. So you have the Morgan City Center, the Mountain Green Town Center, and then obviously these smaller village centers scattered throughout the county. But the bulk of the growth is kind of anticipated to be directed towards these two major centers. And you can see the other areas shown in pink here are, Wasatch Peaks Resort, Snow Basin, and then you have East Canyon Private Resort. And then obviously the state parks, the new Lost Creek State Park and East Canyon State Park. But the idea is to focus growth in those areas. So overall, the land use concept is only, we're only proposing changes right now in the Morgan City area and the Mountain Green area. A little bit later on in the presentation, we want to talk to you about some of these other kind of smaller communities and some of the visions that were expressed in the previous small area plans, maybe see if some of those still apply or if there are new ideas for some of these areas. So we'll focus on those later. But we're basically keeping a lot of the land use that's already in the rest of the county, maybe simplifying or providing a little more detail on how it's classified, showing these master planned resort areas. And then you can see in this olive green color here, this is the very limited amount of public lands in the county. So you can see how much of the county is actually private. And that's one of the challenges and one of the opportunities here in this community as well. There are some detailed blow-ups there, and you can, like I said, we'll be posting these online if you want to look at these in more detail. And also there are maps in the room if you're there in person, if you want to explore some of the details shown on these areas, but not a lot of changes for those areas overall, just focusing in on a few. So Mountain Green, drilling down to what's shown for the concept in this area. The idea of a town center with a town square, has been in the plan, particularly in that study done by AIA, that RDAT study that they put together years ago, and the idea of this town center. So what we wanted to do is just take that idea and give it a little more detail based on current proposed projects, some that are already in the works, and some of the ideas that were expressed in that plan. So starting in the town center, so we have a mixed use area here that would be kind of commercial, residential area, some community commercial or general commercial, excuse me, across Old Highway Road, and then a business park area. So this area kind of forms the heart of these kind of a mix of uses right there in the core. There's a little bit of vehicle oriented commercial to the south between 84 and the town center. And then it goes out from there with some different housing densities and options. So this town center residential is shown in kind of this brownish red color. I don't know how well you all can see that. And that is the most dense housing option that is being proposed. And I believe that is 10 to 20 units per acre. And these are, this general plan is going to contain kind of a range of densities for your consideration, because the next step is obviously to update your zoning ordinances. And that's where you get into the specifics about the actual densities that are allowed and kind of taking it to that next level. But this is just providing the overall vision. So this would be the most dense area, that town center residential. And then it goes out to the village high density residential at 8 to 16 units per acre. And that's in this orange color. So kind of going out from the town center down to the village residential, which are 1/3 of acre lots. And that's in that gold color here. The rural village low density residential is 1/2 acre lots. And that's kind of this medium yellow here. And then rural residential 1 acre lots shown in the light yellow. Ranch residential is kind of this sage green color. And then there's just one small area of the conservation residential in the Mountain Green area with those 20 acre lots. Looking out towards the existing interchange for Mountain Green, there's a flex area there that would allow commercial, light industrial, and business park. And this project, I believe, is another one that's actually already in the planning stages and it might be underway. There's a little bit of general commercial on the corner here and a little bit to the north side of it. And in this area, you have Kent Smith Park that's already in place. And then one thing that I want to point out is this concept is kind of centered around expanding this parks and open space area that's in the center of the Mountain Green area. Right now, a lot of that is focused around the church-owned property, but the idea is maybe you can expand that area a little bit, enhance that, and then tie that into some of these natural corridors that some of the area plans talk about preserving, like Cottonwood Creek and Dry Creek, some of those drainages, and maybe you can implement some recreation opportunities associated with those, but then tying that into this new development that's going in. So you make sure you have a lot of options for recreation and other ways to get around, but also preserving those key corridors. And it could even be, irrigation canals, that sort of thing, those types of corridors. One of the other big changes too is out at the airport. So here's the existing airport itself, and then we're proposing another flex district out here. And this district would include residential, commercial, and light industrial. So the idea would be to enhance this kind of this industrial park by the airport, maybe with some, a little better variety of uses and bringing in a little bit of residential. Maybe somebody wants to, have a pad just close by, they can fly in, and have a place to hang close by. The business park use stays, kind of that Browning factory area that remains. But then on the other side of Cottonwood Creek, I believe the existing general plan shows most of this as business park right now, but we've just, we're proposing a little bit of a variety of residential uses on that side of the creek. Of course, obviously all of this is where slope allows and where, water is available, those sorts of services. So that always comes into play in all of these. I think that there's that. So here are some representative images of some of these different types of uses, just to give you a sense of maybe the densities. Looking at the town center residential, again, that would be the most dense use right in the town center. So you can see some of those are pretty close, and again, tying into some of those recommendations in that RDOT study with materials and forms, trying to take on kind of that mountain resort look or that small Western town look. The mixed use commercial could be, commercial on the bottom, residential on the top, or, other uses integrated in. Looking at the flex district by the airport, it could include residential, light industrial, and commercial. So you have, several different forms that could take. And then the examples of the commercial, light industrial, and business park out kind of closer to the existing interchange. Examples of what the business park form could look like in the town center. Vehicle oriented commercial on the top, you can see like hotels, car dealerships, maybe even kind of larger grocery stores. General commercial on the bottom, some of those other uses that are kind of in and around the town center, kind of smaller facilities. And then a variety of residential densities here, the 30-acre lots, and then the 8 to 16 units per acre. And then on out to some of the lower densities, 1 acre, half-acre lots, 20 and 10. So we're going to try having a breakout again and kind of give everybody some discussion time. And John, maybe we set this one at 6 minutes to give a little more time.
Sounds great.
Thanks. So it'll take a minute to get everybody into their separate rooms online, but those in person, if you want to go ahead and start talking about your feedback there. Okay, did everybody make it back from the breakout rooms? So who wants to share some thoughts from their discussions? You guys want to start out in the room? Tell us what you talked about. I think you're muted in the room if anybody's trying to talk.
Lisa Benson, she's with Landmark Design. She's a consultant. Okay, so our group is, we need to balance the value of the land and tie it to the water, agricultural and growth. The water issues need to be addressed. Would like to see the differences between the old plan and the new plan, land use plans, where it's being changed, what it was and what it's being changed to in depth a little bit more, I think. We need to preserve the natural surroundings or factor them into our growth and where we grow at. The current landowners need to be aware and of what's the proposed changes and actually work with maybe bring the landowners and the community owner and just the community members together so that they can discuss what's going on. Kind of what I heard. Let's see. Can't read that one. What does the community want? Balance it. We need public input, again, with the landowners and the community. Need to be aware that although we have some public land, it's not accessible. And we need education on what can be used and what can't, and probably about trespassing, it sounds like. There's a difference between real water and paper water, and we need to factor that into our planning. So where we go with higher density and we're taking up a lot of water, we need to understand the consequences of that is it's no longer available for agricultural. Then we need to talk about short-term rental, Airbnb codes and how to address those. Does the community want resorts and public access resorts? Do we want public access resorts in the community and where do we want them?
I was just wondering if the county should be interested in acquiring access to the public lands, like the National Forest System land up at the top, so that people can enjoy it because it's all of our land.
We're pretty close to Park City. Do we need another Park City here?
We've heard you don't want to be Park City, so.
What's the thoughts around Mountain Green just becoming incorporated as a city, let them have their autonomy to develop themselves?
That's us.
Lance, do you want to talk about the Mountain Green Incorporation effort briefly?
Let's see, where are we at on that? I guess there was a study done. The Lieutenant Governor's Office commissioned a study, showed it wasn't quite economically viable. That was, I'm trying to remember, a couple of years ago. And they're doing more work on what those numbers we're looking at and the policies that led to those numbers. And it's kind of being discussed is all I know. The short answer from a couple of years ago was really not enough tax base to make it function yet. It's all residential. There's no way that they would never be able to cover their costs. But there's also some policy questions about how that is calculated. So there was ongoing discussions. The Lieutenant Governor and interested parties. Let's see, Zions Bank, Public Finance was where it did the report.
How do general community members get notified of these?
So on the, On the incorporation, I am not sure how that whole thing is happening. It was a group of, I think it was property owners who petitioned the lieutenant governor. They commissioned the study, the economic study. And I mean, came up in a couple council meetings, county council at the time, now commission. So I haven't heard anything on that for several months. So we'd have to check back into it. But before, that would be just another topic to go down.
Does the community want that or do they not want that? I mean, what's this consensus? Do we know?
I think they have to do the studies to see if it's even economically viable, then to go out and see what the community. Yeah. And I don't mean to be hesitant with the information, but we want to talk about the broader vision and not these individual topics tonight while we got everybody together. But discussing incorporation of Mountain Green, how that's going to happen, do we want it? What would it look like if it did? Should be at least touched upon in the general plan. So it's not a bad topic. I just don't want to get into all the details. Plus, I don't remember them.
Okay, any last thoughts maybe from anybody that was in some of the chat groups, any of the breakout rooms online? Do you want to share any thoughts?
And you can do so also by entering your responses in the chat as well if you feel like more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, that's a great way to get your thoughts down so that everybody can kind of check it out in the chat if you want, and we'll have a record of that later. We definitely don't want to lose some of the discussion points that happened in those breakout rooms. So if you would kind of summarize your discussions, just even quick topics in the chat, if you are in a breakout room, and you can also kind of submit your ideas online, as we mentioned. You can do that at any time. So let's go ahead now. It's wanting to jump in here. Let's dive into housing with Kate.
Great. So you have this slide is showing the existing housing stock in Morgan County. You have that population of about 12,500. And based on the available housing and your average household size, you had enough housing for about 12,635 people in 2020. By the year, and so that's a total of about 3,600 housing units. If you want to go to the next slide, by 2040, that's your projected population projection, about 20,500. And to house this number of people, you're going to need an additional 923 units. Now, something to keep in mind is that there have been a lot of entitlements that have been put in place. A lot of development plans are already underway. So what the projections are predicting for your area and what is to come, they do vary right now. You have the potential for growing a little bit faster than what is projected by a lot of different organizations for the county. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So this shows that this is just comparing the housing, the growth that's going to occur within Morgan County versus the growth that's going to occur within the city. You can see that upper bubble shows the county numbers and growth, and the lower bubble shows the city's growth. So a little bit more growth is projected for within the city where the infrastructure and utilities are located. Let's look at the next one. And Lisa, when she was going over land use, she mentioned some possible unit per acre amounts. This just gives you a little bit better idea of what those are. And so we also saw some images that displayed this. Let's go ahead and move on.
So let's have a discussion on housing in particular. Breakout again. Let's do 5 minutes, John. Back. So does anybody, let's see, it looks like we have some post chat. Let's see here. Someone said that we're faced with increased growth no matter what we want. We need to plan accordingly. The Wasatch Front is almost growing out of control. We need to face what's coming and deal with what is inevitable. So that's one of the comments that came in on the chat. Does the housing concept meet? No, that's, never mind. That's my question. Does anybody else have any comments from the chat rooms you want to join in, or in person you want to share your thoughts or your just what you discussed? Not actually hearing anything from the room in person. I don't know if it says you're not muted.
So Lisa, I think they're just wrapping up the discussion and then.
Okay.
So there's just some more in-room discussion happening.
Great.
Okay, so we had some question about the 923 units seems low for the next 20 years in Morgan County. Where did that number come from? Some questions about that. We also discussed where will the houses go? What locations, what areas will they be put in? There's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of higher density in the city. Is that correct? Does that mean apartments? What kind of land use, what kind of density, what would the form of that density take? You guys, we can correct me if I say this wrong. And then does the Wasatch Peaks Ranch Resort 750, they have 750 units entitled. Is that factored into the 923? The question of where should density go again, specifically we have areas, out in the county that are agricultural. Is that where the densities, we're gonna have to change some of those or not? There's a desire for growth to happen in the Western Morgan County. It would be a better area for growth, in some people's opinion, just saying. Well, not everybody agrees with you. Let's see, in water, it just says water. So water's an issue and we need to factor that into the growth, right? And also, oh, that's right. We would need more water for this type of growth. That's what I believe was kind of the comment. And then also the tax rate should vary on different land uses to encourage certain things and not others. Yeah, okay. That's kind of our report out.
Kate, do you want to respond to a couple of those questions about your calculations?
Yeah, so I want to respond to the entitlements comment and where the numbers came from. So we've had quite a bit of internal discussion regarding the projections that we've found for the area and the entitlements that are currently in place. You may have noticed I made that little caveat that we're expecting your growth to be a little bit higher than what is actually being projected. Yes, you have quite a bit of entitlements in place. I'm not the one that pulled what is entitled. I'm not sure if that particular development was included, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. The number of entitled units is about at what the projected number of housing units that you will need is. So we are expecting you to have quite a bit more growth than what Wasatch Front Regional Council has projected, what we were able to project based on your historic growth rate using your census information, and what the governor's office had projected for you as well. So yes, you are anticipated to grow a bit faster. We are aware of the different types of housing going in, and secondary homes are taxed differently than primary residences, just so you're aware of that. Lisa, I'm not sure if you want me to address any other items.
Well, I think we were talking, some of the questions came up about where the housing is going to go. And I guess that's kind of what this concept is trying to kind of push, is that the bulk of this housing would hopefully grow in Morgan City and in Mountain Green. That's the idea, is try to focus the growth there so that you keep these other areas in between a little more open. Some of the smaller village centers in their small area plans from the previous general plan mentioned that they were okay with a little more density, but nothing like, density in those village centers is like the low end of kind of those examples that we were showing. So I think definitely the idea is still just kind of keep it focused, keep it tight where you're going to grow. And as far as the form that it takes, I think some of that comes down to, when you update your zoning ordinances, kind of what you're going to allow, what the look of that is going to be, kind of specific allowed uses. So a lot of that is still to be addressed in the next stages. This is just kind of the big visioning portion of the whole planning process. And then I can share a couple of thoughts from my breakout group. It was just that the thought that 1 and 2 acre lots are more damaging and use up a lot more land, keeping the density in the centers, and that they're kind of use water more efficiently. People have smaller yards to water, more people with less yards, and also kind of maybe the comparison of Kimball Junction, where there's a little bit more density in the center there, but then it's kind of more open areas around that, just as kind of one example to look at. And some comments about making sure that the new general plans are user friendly, so that city and county leadership can understand them, and that they're a lot easier and user friendly for developers and residents who want to make changes in the future, or maybe develop their property and want to know what's possible.
And Lisa, some additional comments from other groups. One group said that high density housing is necessary to conserve water and resources, fewer lawns to water, etc. In addition, it is important to protect commercial space and development by building residential in residential appropriate areas. And then also from another group, WP Ranch is primarily part-time seasonal residents.
Hey, any other thoughts on housing? We can go ahead and move on to transportation now. Turn the time over to Catherine.
Great, thank you, Lisa. So we've developed some transportation concepts at the city and county levels, and in the interest of everyone's time, I'm going to go over them a little bit quickly here, but yeah, let me know if you've got questions. So as a quick refresher, guiding principle 6 is about transportation. The guiding principle is to improve the safety and connectivity of roadways in the community. So with that in mind, if we'll go to the next slide, we've identified some key transportation opportunities, and they're listed here: speed management, traffic calming, pedestrian lanes, multimodal main streets, school connections, bridges, improving access for everybody regardless of the mode. So if you go to the next slide. So this list here is from the Morgan Ogden Valley Rural Planning Organization, kind of the regional planning organization, and their long-range transportation plan has identified these 15 projects to be implemented over the next 30 years. And so in developing our transportation concepts, we started with these adopted plan projects that we then did safety and connectivity analyses, did things such as identifying crash hotspots and safety issues, and incorporated the community feedback and the outreach results as well. And so with that, let's introduce the transportation concepts, starting with Morgan County. So let's see, let's go. We've kind of separated these concepts not just by the area, but also by topics. So we're looking at safety here for the countywide picture for safety. We see that there are many concepts here to aimed to improve the safety. So safely accommodating other modes of transportation without conflicting with vehicles, be it like a separate trail or an off-road bike lane, or there are measures to traffic calming measures and measures to reduce the legal and or the design speed in places with high crash rates, as well as, lighting and signing. We've heard that already this meeting. If you go to the next slide, we'll kind of go through the connectivity, countywide connectivity. And here, we're looking at kind of access management to create multiple access points in residential areas, as well as streamlining access points along larger roads to prevent congestion. And so, for connectivity focused things, you're looking at your block lengths, your intersection spacing, those sorts of things. And honestly, one of the best ways to improve connectivity is to focus on increasing the number of ways people can get around. So if you go to the next slide, let's kind of just jump into the Mountain Green safety. So this is talk about things like public safety education, not just for vehicle drivers, but bicycle riders, equestrian riders, pedestrians, et cetera, just trying to have a little bit more like a broader conversation. So other elements looking at dedicated right and left turn lanes at intersections, these help remove conflict points, accommodating walking and riding on existing roads in a way that doesn't conflict with vehicles, like we've talked about the last one, and looking at, reducing the legal and or design speed, looking at, performing road safety audits, finding out what are the best ways to address the safety issues unique to the specific roads. And again, going into the wayfinding and safety signs and reflective posts, those sorts of things on country roads. There's not a whole lot of lighting on those roads, and with wildlife about, safety is always going to be an issue. So next slide, please. So looking through the connectivity elements for Mountain Green, these would include things such as, completing the sidewalk network so that, residents have a safe way of walking to from their home to the neighbors or the park or whatever. And again, block lengths, intersections, as we said, connectivity is access for everyone. And so trying to sort of limit private streets or cul-de-sacs in new development, or at least unnecessary amounts of private streets or cul-de-sacs, does give you better connectivity and allows, means there's more than one route to get where you need to go. So the next slide. So all of that, I'm just throwing all that information at you. I'm going to throw a whole lot more. So I just kind of wanted to give you these common measures and mitigations and different approaches and things. So what these things have talked about, these aren't the be all end all. There are other options. There are different approaches and things for dealing with safety, traffic calming, connectivity, and pedestrian crossings. So to start with, these are some of the common safety countermeasures that the U.S. Department of Transportation has essentially identified as being useful in places such as Morgan City, Morgan County, and Mountain Green. These aren't necessarily the same things that would work in, say, Park City or Salt Lake City. These are for more specific to the area. So again, you're looking at things like left turn conflicts. You're looking at more efficient road striping, dedicated right and left turn lanes, medians and pedestrian crossings, the road safety audits, and again, going back to evaluating the speed limit on the road, these sorts of options are really good for both safety as well as traffic calming. But with traffic calming in mind, if you'll go to the next slide, we've actually developed a traffic calming toolkit with different mitigations to help Morgan with traffic calming to keep congestion and bottlenecking under control. And a lot of these you already know about. Speed bumps, raised crosswalks, what we call speed trailers. They're just, basically telling you how fast you're going. But there are a few others that kind of relate to the way the road feels as you're on it. So these would include things such as lane chokers, curb bulb outs, what we call traffic circles. These are actually smaller than roundabouts. They're just meant to slow you down just a little bit. So these sorts of things are, like I said, these kind of tools that we've used with great success to essentially prevent there being these massive traffic jams. And so if you go to the next one's a little bit more, this one's kind of interesting. So the state of Utah has come out with this really good resource. It's the Utah Connectivity Guide. It has tailor-made approaches to improving the connectivity for essentially Utah's unique cities and towns. And in it, they describe plans and policies to accommodate everybody. and these potential standards for streets and direct connections to destinations, access to faster ways of getting to where you need to go. And going back to I had something I was going to say here. That's okay. We'll move on. Interest of time. So if we go to the next slide. This is one of my favorite things. So there are multiple kinds of pedestrian crossings, and each one has a purpose and a place in which it's most effective. And so I just kind of wanted to give a quick overview of not just the pedestrian crossings, but the kinds of signals that can be used or don't have to be used. These are just to inform you of options that are available. So at the top of the list, these are the different kinds of striping that are used. And honestly, each one, some are more visible than others. So for instance, in Salt Lake County, the continental style, the zebra style, and the ladder style are very common around school zones. They're much more visible to vehicles upon approach. And so you see them much earlier. You're able to stop sooner. For pedestrian crossings that are outside of school zones, it's more standard. It's more of the standard striping that you see, the second from the left. But I mean, in addition to all of this, there are many different kinds of crossing infrastructure. So apart from the standard striped crossing with a sign, which you can see there, we also have what we call hawk controlled crossings. They're high intensity activated crosswalks. That second one from the left, which it's got a button for the person who's trying to cross the street. They'll push it and just let the signal know that I would like to cross the street. The lights come on, it alerts traffic and gives X amount of time for the car to slow down and stop. And then after oncoming traffic has been stopped, you can cross the street safely. One that's really popular around areas that maybe aren't quite so busy, but you've got a lot of people at specific times of the day who need to cross the street, such as maybe near schools, but not exactly adjacent to warrant a crossing guard, but are what we call these rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And so these also have a button that they push. There's a really obnoxious flashing light on it that lets oncoming traffic know that, hey, someone is trying to cross, you should probably slow down. And what it does, I mean, it essentially will catch the attention of the vehicle driver, they stop, and it allows the person or the groups of people trying to cross. This other one is one of my favorites. It's the Pegasus crossing. And it's multimodal, and it's really useful in areas where you've got a lot of people walking, biking, riding horses, ATVs, just a whole wide variety of transportation. And so that one's appropriate for, like I said, dealing with each one, the specific needs and such for those. And each one of these has their own costs and their own, they're appropriate in specific situations. So again, quick overview of what's possible in the options, and we can go more in depth a little bit later, but yeah, let's go to the discussion.
Okay, so we'll have a quick breakout on transportation and then come back together. Okay, does anybody want to share what they talked about in the breakout session?
So Lisa, they're asking about the recording of the meeting, and Lance just reminded everybody to use the website as well as another tool to make specific comments and zoom in on things. So, yeah, it's recorded. Are we going to post the recording somewhere, or is this just for your reference?
No, we'll be posting the recording. Yeah, that'll be available, and the materials presented here tonight will be available too, so you can dig into more detail at your leisure.
On the website?
Yeah, it'll be on the website. And make sure to sign in. There are some sign-in sheets there at the meeting, because we'll put together an email distribution list, kind of add your names to who we already have on that. And we'll send out an email when everything has been posted and is available on the website for you to review. So make sure to sign in. And then if you don't want to do that, just go ahead and check the website. It may be early next week before that gets posted, but we'll see if we can get it up even tomorrow.
Okay, so it's 7. The city one is supposed to start at 7. So what's the plan for the rest of the?
Yeah, I think the county portion of the meeting might spill over just a little bit. We'll try to blast through this last few sections here. So if you're just joining us, we're going to wrap up this last portion of the county discussion, and then we'll jump right into the city discussion. So let's hurry and go through the economic development component, and maybe we won't have individual breakouts on some of these last topics. We'll just wrap economic development in with some other topics. So Kate, if you want to.
Yeah, so with the economic development, we had originally broken them back out between the county and the city, but then based on some feedback, we made them more similar. So we have that focus on the two-pronged approach, with focusing on the needs of the locals, as well as promoting the area as a place for tourism. With that, where the development occurs, it needs to be done correctly. And so focusing on services and for locals and also for tourists is the focus that we have here. Go to the next one.
So we'll skip the breakout on economic development, and I'll just go ahead and summarize the recreation concept real quick, kind of building on what Catherine already presented. The approach to trails in the community is a two-pronged approach. Short term, we're looking at a network of street side trails. So what you can get within the existing right-of-ways for the roads, or maybe with the purchase of additional or the acquisition of additional right-of-way right next to the roadway. And that would look something like if you've been in Midway and you see that little trail that's in a few areas of the community, that's just an asphalt trail off to the side, but it's slightly removed, or it does have a little more separation in some portions of the community. So that would be an option to help get people off of the, within the right-of-way corridor, or it could just be kind of striped bike lanes, giving a little bit of a shoulder, because as you know, some of the roadways in the community are quite narrow, and it's hard to kind of get all of the users in there safely. So that's the short-term approach. And then looking long-term, you would have more of these non-street side routes, and that would be a trail corridor along the Weber River, for example, or along East Canyon Creek. And, most likely it would probably only be on one side of the river or one side of the creek. And this is something that is long-term. I mean, this is multiple generations. It might be your great grandkids that, see this vision come to reality. So just trying to connect some of those destinations around the community with this kind of two-level trail system. Details of those areas. And again, I think we already covered the Mountain Green recreation concept for the most part, so we don't need to go into that. One last breakout group before we jump into the city portion of the discussion, where we'll get into detail on Mountain Green, Morgan City Center itself. Looking at the village centers really quick, what we're going to do for this last breakout is we'll have 7 different groups happening at the same time, and they'll each have their own topic. We'll have a village center discussion for Peterson or Croydon, all of these different areas. And there's kind of a discussion point or kind of takeaways that came out of these area plans that are unique for each of these areas, and then some questions associated with that. So we'll run through these real quick. We'll break you out, and what you can do is choose which breakout group you want to go to. And then for those in person, we have kind of a summary of these questions, and then you can kind of break out into different groups within the room if you want to, or just talk as a group. So Peterson, some of the unique elements of that was density in the center transitioning out, which would require standalone water treatment facilities, a small amount of commercial in the center in addition to what's already there, and then the desire for park, trails, and a pool. So obviously, you know, some of those are some big ticket items. So the questions are, you know, are you still okay with density and a little more commercial in the center? And do you still want to park in a pool? If so, are you willing to pay for them? And how are you willing to pay for them? I know that a lot of the parks within the community already were kind of privately fundraised for and privately funded, so, or community-based funding. So are you willing to do that, or would you want to bond? What sort of options are you open to? Again, balancing the need for services and keeping taxes low. So enterprise, the desire for a walkable village center, some minor commercial uses in the center, and then transitioning those industrial uses to residential uses when their kind of lifespan is up. So questions, do you still want a walkable center? Do you want some of that additional or some commercial in the center? There's not any there right now. And then what do you want to see for those industrial areas in the future? Stoddard and North Morgan, there wasn't, you know, not a lot of super unique elements to this. There was a lot of kind of commonality with some of the other areas in the county, but again, mentioning that they would like a park in their village center as well. So, you know, how many parks do we need? Where do we want them? And, you know, do you have any other ideas or discussion topics for any of these village centers as we're going through this? These are just some of the ideas that came out of the former plans, and some of them are kind of old. So please update us if you have any thoughts on these areas and specifics. Milton, they wanted just residential uses only. And then, you know, one of the big issues was the Deep Creek area, kind of those temporary recreational uses, some concerns about people building maybe more permanent structures up there or putting in facilities like outhouses that were not properly taking care of the water quality, some concerns about water quality and other impacts there. So, and then I just had another question too about Milton Park there. Is that meeting your needs? And then are you still okay with just residential uses? You like the feel of that? Have the issues in Deep Creek been addressed, or are there other issues that need to be discussed? Looking at Round Valley, Como Springs and Taggart, access is the biggest issue in the Round Valley. You know, it's just that narrow winding road that accesses it from the west. They also have issues with non-conforming lots and wanting to see some exceptions there to allow some development to occur. Suggestion for commercial uses at the Reese interchange down the road if some of those uses change. And then maybe once that gravel pit is closed down, adding a recreational use, maybe like a fishing pond, I think is what the plan mentioned. Taggart, the focus was on just preserving those existing uses. So questions, any outstanding issues in Round Valley? Is there still interest in commercial or recreational uses in the Reese area? And then do you have any changes in the Taggart area or any concerns that need to be addressed in the general plan? Looking at Croydon, again, with the new again, Lost Creek State Park, making sure that those issues are addressed. So you have proper management, proper infrastructure, making sure to protect that water quality, and other things that came out of their plan, developing along the main roads only, a little bit of additional commercial zoning to help serve some of those users that are heading up to the reservoir, capitalizing on that. And then again, the industrial area, which, you know, we in our focus group, that use was still well out into the future. But when that does change, what do you want to see happening there? So some of the topics to talk about there. And then finally, Porterville and Richville. You know, you've got a rich agricultural history down there, East Canyon State Park and East Canyon Resort. Some of the ideas mentioned in that area were cluster development in the village centers with limited commercial uses. So providing a little bit of commercial use out there in those centers. Again, TDRs with density focused in the resort area. So maybe keeping other areas in the community more open and focusing, allowing a little more density in those resort areas with those transfers of development rights, and the desire for limited road expansion. So John is going to break everybody out. You choose which group you want to go to. We'll just have this last discussion and come together, and then we'll be talking about Morgan City shortly. So you can see if you open up if you're online, you might have to scroll down a little bit in the breakout rooms window that pops up. And then if you scroll down, all of the different areas are listed down there. So you can jump around to whichever area you want to and just hit the join button by the topic that you want to discuss. Okay, it looks like things are, everybody's kind of broke out there in the,
So Lisa, our room just switched places, so we kind of dismiss the county people, the ones that are in the city are coming in.
okay,
I think we're planning on starting completely from the beginning with the city group,
okay, okay.
just so
Um,
you know kind of what's going on.
No, that's great. So anybody that's still online and you discussed some of that last topic for the county, just go ahead and maybe jot some notes in the chat or get a hold of us through the website. Share your thoughts with us. And if you're in person, you know, those people can leave. We have your notes on the big post-it board there, and anybody can leave comments on the comment form too. So let's go ahead and jump into Morgan City if everybody wants to. In there. And thank you again, everyone, for your time. We appreciate everyone who joined us for the first portion talking about the county. We look forward to a good discussion on the city now.
So Lisa, I counted 66 participants in the first session, so that's pretty good.
Great. Thank you.
I included the ones online since I could see them.
That's great.
We had
Thank you.
44 in person and 22 online.
Awesome.
So we'll try and get the room settled and ready.
Okay.
And we'll start like we did again with Lance, an introduction, then he'll turn some time over to you. Do you want to let the people online know kind of where we're at as well?
Yeah. So everybody that's online right now, we just wrapped up a discussion of the Morgan County concept, and we're about to dive into a discussion on Morgan City. So we'll be looking in detail at land use, transportation, housing, and economics for Morgan City. So we'd love to have you stay on for that conversation if you have time to join us. If you don't, you can check out the recording online. That will hopefully be posted tomorrow. And we'll also upload these materials to the website so you can, you know, browse these materials at any time. And if you don't feel like you got enough time to discuss things, then you can reach out through the website. You can even just call us directly if you want to have a conversation. That's great. We're open to hearing from everybody. So we're going to have Lance with the county will be giving an intro to the process overall in just a minute here.
So Lisa, they just went out to round the last people up in the.
Okay.
Give us like 2 minutes.
That's great. I love that we have people online and in person. It's fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Lisa, while we're waiting for them,
Yes.
I just want to give a nod to your little owls in the pictures. From a wildlife guide, they're really cute. They're really cool.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
That's the value of wildlife, right? I mean, you got to give it that one extra plug.
That's right.
They're very cute pictures.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep, we all love it. So thank you, everyone, for your patience. And I think we have most of our bugs worked out now. So maybe this city concept portion will go smooth. Appreciate your time.
You want to grab a mic? So Lisa, I think we're ready. Lance will get us started.
Great.
Okay. Well, we only have one new person. Two? No, you were here. Anyway, so you guys heard before. Morgan County's been working on general plan, and I should have done introductions before. This is Lisa Benson with Landmark Design. She has a whole team somewhere out there on the internet. And, but Morgan County and Morgan City got a grant from UDOT to put together a general plan update. And what we're trying to get at, and what I was just discussing out there, is we've got tough issues to deal with. And the idea of the general plan is to give the county a high level view of here's our goals, here's our vision, here's the objectives we want to accomplish. We want to keep taxes low and develop, and keep the small town rural atmosphere, right? So how can we do that? And where's the balance going to be? It is tough choices because we have limited resources. And if we want to keep open land, everybody can't live on 5 acres. That fills it up. That costs a lot in taxes. There's consequences to each of our decisions. And the general plan is having that discussion, seeing where we can compromise and come together, and then institute that policy through zoning and other issues as we go forward. So that's the idea of the general plan at a high level. And yes. Morgan County and city. So they gave it to both of us so we could work together. There's a lot of overlap in the data gathering. But the idea is that we will have the Morgan County general plan and the Morgan City general plan. But we got to tie them together. That would be horrible planning to ignore each other, right? So is that what cover it, Lisa?
That sounds great. Okay. Well, we'll just jump right in. Quick introductions of our team. Lisa Benson with Landmark Design. We're landscape architects and planners. I also have John Locke from our team. And we have Catherine Scollingsberg with Fair and Piers Transportation Planners, and Kate Warrett with Lewis Young Robertson in Birmingham. I struggle with that every time. They are economic and financial planners. So we have kind of a complete team looking at this project, and we are excited to dive into what we've been finding in Morgan City to talk about with you guys tonight. So let's find out. We have a few new people who have joined. If you're online, if you wouldn't mind entering in the chat, kind of the area of Morgan that you're from, if you're from the city, or if you're from the county, if you're from, one of the smaller areas in the county, and maybe your first name. We have some Zoom users or Galaxy phones, so sometimes it's nice to have a first name. If you don't want to share it, that's totally fine. And do we have any new people in the room from different that want to introduce themselves as well?
I'm Sue Ann. Oh, do I need to grab this? Okay. Hi, I'm Sue Ann Jenkins Harris. I'm from Morgan, and we own land across from the soccer fields and just along the Weber River.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
My name is Mauricio Melendez, and I live here in Morgan City. Yeah.
Thanks. And Mauricio was in one of our focus groups, so thanks for coming out tonight too. All right. So with that, we're going to jump in. Looks like we have a few people from Island Road online. Someone from Peterson. Yep, Cody from the Peterson area. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining tonight. I think Lance already gave a pretty good overview of the purpose of the plans. Quick note on the time frame. While it's called Morgan 2050, we're actually looking at the 2040 time frame in detail because that's the most accurate number for housing. So that's kind of representative of the numbers that we'll be talking about with population growth and housing as we're moving forward. So prior to tonight's meeting, we've had a comprehensive public engagement process. We had a statistically valid community-wide survey. The website, morgan2050.org, has been up and running, and we've been collecting great feedback through there. We had some online scoping meetings in March, and we also hosted a large number of public or focus groups, I should say. We've gathered a significant amount of feedback from all of these avenues and honed all of that down into 9 guiding principles. Community character. So protecting that rural, small Western town atmosphere of Morgan is really important to residents of the area. protecting that agricultural identity and also its value as a livelihood. And also the visual character that it brings, the lifestyle that it provides for a lot of people. Protecting Morgan's environment and natural resources, preserving the quality of life for residents, also making it beautiful for visitors, and protecting wildlife habitat and all of those good things that we enjoy as we get in the great outdoors. Looking at smart growth, so where development can occur, making sure that we do it right, and then balancing low taxes with the need for affordable housing, services, and other infrastructure, and transportation, looking at improving the safety and connectivity of roadways in the community, and housing, providing a good variety of housing opportunities for natural growth. So if people that live in the community, they want to be able to age up in the community. You know, if you want to retire in the community, being able to move into a place that is more affordable and more manageable. Also for people that want to move, you know, from outside the community that may work up here, or, you know, other options. Economic development, serving both local residents and employees, and then also enhancing that tourism market, kind of tapping into that for the economy, and providing a comprehensive and connected parks and recreation system. That was really important for people through the feedback as well. I don't think we're going to spend as much time on some of these breakout sessions. I think we're going to skip the guiding principles breakout session and maybe just have a quick discussion with everybody here right now. Do you feel like any of these, do you feel like these guiding principles kind of cover, like I'm talking a really big high level vision? Is there anything that we're leaving out? Or do you maybe disagree with any of these? And people online, you can unmute yourself. If you can always just, if you want to use the raise hand feature, you can do that, or just unmute yourself and chime in the conversation as well. And people in the room, we're happy to hear from you if you have any thoughts. And, you know, are any of these more important? Is there an overriding one of these that seems more important to you than any? If not, we'll just swing right on.
So Lisa,
Yes.
so go back to your, yeah, scroll back a little more. For me, one of the big challenges Morgan City in the future is your number one bullet point there, which I would dearly love to do and want to do. Then you skip down to 7.
Right.
And for me, to me, how do we do that? I mean, how do we let Morgan continue to be a rural atmosphere? I think that we all know and love, and it's why we are here. And yet, we do know that some growth is going to be inevitable. We've seen it, you know, we've seen it for several years now, but you know, I guess my thought is they almost seem contradictory, and I'm wondering how they blend together, how we blend that together.
Well, I think that's a great point. And I think something to keep in mind too is that the plans are being done kind of simultaneously with the city and the county. And so we may be able to take actions in some areas that help keep other areas more open, and that's what we'll get into with these land use concepts, is focusing growth in certain areas of the county so that we can keep some of these areas open. That's a great point, a great comment.
Lisa, a comment from the chat. They want to emphasize that to keep a small town feel, property owners are going to need to stop selling their land to developers. Without that, then small town feel goes away.
Okay.
Okay, I live in Morgan City. My husband's a native Morgan. His relatives helped found North Morgan, so we have deep roots in Morgan. And one of our concern is we feel like there's so many apartment complexes going up in Morgan City, but not enough businesses to support that growth in that tax base. So I'm wondering why we keep approving all these apartment buildings when we don't have all the tax base to support it.
I mean, do we want to talk about that for a second? And just the reality is, the businesses need more rooftops to make it viable. It's not the other way around. The business doesn't bring the housing brings the business options. And finding that right balance is the hard part, because we don't want a big box store, but we do want those services. I mean, how many of us shop down in Morgan or down in Ogden, right? And so we do that. All the economic data, all this stuff, 70% of the county leaves the county to work.
Sorry, is there some type of incentive for businesses to come to Morgan so that we can support that tax base?
So, and part of, I mean, well, I'm trying not to be too preachy, but I mean, it's an all-encompassing thing of if we have the right mix of housing and the right amenities and the right lifestyle and all that, then we get more people to live here, which brings in some of those businesses. We have economic development people that are working really hard, trying to do what they can to bring in the economic development, but you know, well, I don't know what they're aware of or not. I'm not going to say that, but I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on that people just don't know that's happening, and I think that's really true. But anyway, it's all part of this overall package that has to come together. And I'm a planner, so of course I think the general plan is the way to do it, where we set that vision and goals and we follow those policies so that it lays out a pattern that businesses can rely on. Oh, Morgan's got their act together. They know what they're doing. They're developing quality life. I want to be there. That's been the driver for the last 15, 20 years in economic development.
So some of the points that the one is the economic development, the other is parks and recreation, involving tourism and economic growth. I saw the comment that says, support your own county, which is great, but I own multiple businesses here in Morgan County, and I can tell you that 95% of my clients are not from Morgan County, and that is including a retail space. And I'm talking like we have clients who visit us from out of state that come into our retail space, and that's specifically for tourism purposes. So yes, supporting your own county would be great, but factually, it just doesn't, it's not happening, and it's not going to happen. So in order for businesses to be incentivized to stay here, because I'll be honest, for me to run a bunch of my businesses outside of this county is a lot less expensive. But we stay here because of the lifestyle, because of the people, because of the county and the community itself. The one thing is, so for economic development and tourism, we have to understand that if we can, one of my concerns is with tourism, every dollar that's spent in Morgan County for tourism has a huge return. And we're talking about, yes, housing is going to be an issue, but with tourism, it brings in so much money. We're talking about keeping rural. One of the things is looking at what other communities are doing in order to maintain their rural space, in order to maintain their communities, and what they've done involving tourism in order to grow that and increase the taxable income based off of that. If you look at what the Beaver Creamery does, I mean, that's not just right off the freeway. You have to drive around in order to get to the creamery, but that is a huge selling point for people to come in, spend money, and honestly leave. So that's one of the things you can have with tourism. People will come in, spend a grip of money, and leave. So that's one of the things. If we're talking about how we want to grow this tax base, how we want to grow that, tourism is one of the places where you're going to get the most return for your money.
There's also a comment in the chat regarding tourism that every household saves an annual of $1,310 annually in taxes due to tourism.
I had a comment here. My name is Paul Stringer. Our family's had property here in Morgan for 55 years, and family members being here 90 years. So we live currently in Star Valley Ranch in Wyoming. The things that you're talking about are almost identical for us as they are here. We are the gateway to Jackson, Jackson Hole. So yes, we have a lot of people like he's talking about that come through and spend tourism dollars on the way in our stores and gas stations and all of those many different things. And it is very important money. Like you said, it's money that's coming into the community and staying in our community. It helps us grow in many ways, and it helps us plan many things. As far as talking about development and land use, you know, we're in the same boat. You know, we work hard at providing communities and developments that bring in a great deal of people, some of them from Utah. I hate to tell you, a lot of them from Utah, but that complement our public lands around us. You know, we work hard at we have people called trail crews. Our trail crews are all volunteers that work and maintain trails into the mountains for hikers, bikers, ATVs, all of those things. So we're not in contrast with one another. We work together on that to make sure that we don't lose our beauty, lose all of the resources that we have, but at the same time providing, you know, new home sites and making sure that there is plans in place to maintain that beauty. So they can work together, you know. There's pieces of land when you talk about, you know, maintaining the rural areas, that's great, but there are certain properties within Morgan and within our area that provide no benefits in a rural setting. They're not great for agricultural, for livestock, and they're not great. They're not public lands. They're not accessible. They're private lands. Easily, those properties can be developed that adds to the community, doesn't take away. I agree. You don't just go mow down forest and things like that just to put in housing. You know, you can moderate that, keep that light. But anyway, I think there's a lot of opportunities here for growth and of many different types. We have many different types of developments in our community. In our very neighborhood, 60 houses under construction currently. So.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts on those guiding principles. And if you think of anything later, you know, you can definitely chime in through the website or get in touch with us otherwise and to share those thoughts. We're going to have Kate jump into the demographic conditions and future projections here.
Great. So thank you, Lisa. What we can see here are the population projections for both Morgan City and Morgan County. These numbers were compiled by Wasatch Front Regional Council. They are a regional planning agency that is known for their planning in the state of Utah. You can see within the city, you are anticipated to about double your size within the next 20 years. Let's look at the next sheet. Okay, so what this shows, this is the age divisions for your population. The solid green is the most recent census data, and then the outline is what the census data showed in 2010. So you can see that the population is increasing in the younger years and decreasing towards the mid-career range. Let's go ahead and keep going. And then in those mid-career range ages within the city, the population is increasing, and also at that younger range, you have a lot more growth happening also. So this just shows that you have a variety in ages within the city. So you need to keep that in mind when considering lifestyles, types of amenities and housing that are required by your population. Let's go to the next slide. And then within Morgan City, your household sizes have varied quite drastically over the years. We have proceeded with your current household size of 3.24 as our estimate of projecting forward due to the fluctuations that you've had. Let's go ahead and move forward. And if this map is in the building with you, it'd be interesting for you to look at later. It just shows the existing housing and the age of it. So let's go ahead and skip that. Within Morgan City and Morgan County, you have a significantly higher household income than the state of Utah. This means that you have the potential for a higher spending per capita if more retail opportunities were available to you. It also means that you can bring in, well, it's a good thing for you to have that higher household income, but it also comments on the type of housing that has been constructed in the past and the type of population that you've been bringing in. Let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay, so we're gonna just jump into the land use concept here and kind of building on what you guys were talking about with regard to the principles, the idea of kind of protecting that agricultural use in Morgan, preserving those open lands, that community character. The idea is to focus the growth in centers. And so that's kind of the top strategy to keep some of these open lands. We have a list of other strategies here as well, things like land preservation tools, programs and ordinances, tax credits and exemptions, economic partnerships, promoting those local farmers and ranchers, maybe with farmers markets or direct marketing, agritourism, and that could even expand, as Marisa was talking about, to some of these other uses within the community, some of those other commercial, local, kind of the shop local idea, and also including those farmers and ranchers to make sure to support that industry as well. Districts to protect and encourage agriculture, and even fostering education and innovation in agriculture, such as community educational farms like Wheeler Farm down in Salt Lake, or the Bastion agricultural property that's kind of that whole complex that's going in down in Harriman, and maybe supporting sustainable, research into sustainable or alternative methods of moving forward. So that's kind of the basis for the approach. We covered a lot in the county session earlier, but the idea is to focus the growth within Morgan City and also in Mountain Green, so that those are the two main areas where you would see kind of this, the development of the housing options and the density. So looking at Morgan City, I just wanted to explain a few things on the map here real quick. The solid line is the existing city boundary. The darker dashed line is kind of a recommended or proposed annexation boundary. Some of these alignments are existing, but there are a few changes here up in the northeast corner, particularly around the city that the land already owns, that is just hillside development right now, and around the Geneva Rock property. There's also another boundary here. The lighter gray dashed line is called the rural urban transition area. And these are areas that are just outside of the current city boundaries or the city annexation areas that could be annexed in the future into the city without having to provide any significant costly upgrades to the sewer system, in particular, the water treatment facility, because that's your big limiting factor as far as infrastructure and development goes. So these areas could eventually annex in if they wanted to, and the city wouldn't be too troubled to provide those services. So these proposed concepts kind of look out to the boundaries of that urban transition area, the rural urban transition area as well. So I'm going to go through a description of this land use concept. So we're starting out in the city center. There are 2 downtown districts. We have your commercial street downtown district here in the light pink, and that's intended to be kind of a mixed use district that focuses on that kind of the historic character of the buildings that are already down there. You have commercial uses, historic residential uses, some of those kind of that look and feel that would go all the way down to the river and kind of form this commercial street downtown district. On the northwest side of State Street, what's called the new downtown district. And if you guys have a better idea for a name, we would appreciate any suggestions. But the idea is that that would be a mixed use district as well for residential and commercial uses, but not necessarily have the same look and feel of that historic area. One of the features actually that I want to point out on this concept overall is the transportation overlay. So we have a proposed frontage road that goes through this area from State Street on the south side of 84 and connects up to Stoddard Lane. One of the other important road connections is from, I believe it's 600 North, that comes down here by the stormwater treatment facility, catches Island Road, and then ties that out to Morgan Valley Drive. So the idea is to really help with the circulation and connectivity in the community to get some other options for moving around in the community. So that kind of helps form the basis of some of these, the structure of some of these other uses. And you can see some other dashed proposed roads in here, kind of smaller street grid networks within the new downtown district, and then bigger blocks in this, what's called the flex district. So this area shown in purple is intended to be commercial, light industrial, and residential. So you'd have a blend of uses in this area that kind of transitions from that downtown use. Adjacent to that is the live work district, and that would be units that have kind of office or kind of light industrial or shop uses in the same structure as a residential unit. So you would have a place where you live and work in the same building. That's kind of the idea with that. And I'll show you some representative images of these in just a little bit. Transitioning between those uses and the river is this river-oriented commercial and recreation district. And that's intended to be kind of more either temporary or water-focused uses. So it could be anything from RV parks, little hip camp setups, to kind of river-focused like outdoor dining or guide shops, those sorts of uses along the river. And we also show that use over by the Como Springs area. So kind of those uses that are kind of complementary to the river front. That transitions then out to some medium density residential at 6 to 15 units per acre. That's what's shown all in the orange around kind of the downtown area. Other uses in the downtown, we have in blue, this is the public facilities area, and that's all, city, county buildings, all of the schools. And those are connected to the downtown districts by this general commercial area. And the idea is that this downtown area would really be defined by these 3 gateways that you see, these asterisks here. So you have State Street and Commercial Street, State and Young, and then you'll have the new bridge here at the end of Young Street. That'll be kind of your 3rd major gateway into this downtown core. And then the plan will talk about some special treatments along the roadways here to help transition between these zones and make them a little more pedestrian friendly, maybe a little more bike friendly, some places that people actually want to kind of hang out and spend a little more time. The other uses in the downtown area, this is one that we would love to hear your opinion on. This kind of sage green color is what we're showing as either a garden court residential use or an event center. So with the proximity, by the fairgrounds here and the downtown district, maybe some sort of a moderately sized event center for indoor events would be one idea. The other idea that we're talking about here is garden court residential, where you have more kind of dense clustered homes that are centered around green open space. that is developed. And I'll show you a few images of that here in a minute. But those are kind of some of the ideas we're tossing around for that idea. You have the fairgrounds here, some of those existing like the pickleball courts, and the ideas that maybe this could become a future regional park, kind of a major recreation complex. And that could even incorporate the water park that people have talked about, if this is a good location for that. That all entails future studies, but just an idea for that use along here. On the other side of 84, we have highway commercial along, kind of between 84 and 7th East. And then another frontage road here that connects from 300 North up to 600 North, again, just to provide better access to these highway commercial uses, so people aren't having to travel through the residential neighborhoods necessarily to get to those. And then again, transitioning out to the medium density residential uses at 6 to 15 units per acre. And then the yellow use around the perimeter of the city is low density residential at 2 to 5 units per acre. So still trying to, even though it's a lower density, we're still trying to make this the place where a lot of the development for the county is focused, again, so that you can keep those other areas open within the county. And just some industrial uses here where you have the Geneva Rock property. And then all of the green is this recreation parks and open space use. And, that's everything from maybe a corridor along the Weber River going through the entire city, connecting out to other areas of the community, either along roadways or irrigation canals, in some alternative routes that you might have throughout the community. And here are some images of what those districts might look like. Your commercial district, again, more kind of historic, looking in form and materials. The newer downtown district, same types of uses, similar density too, but just a little bit of a different look. That flex district, again, commercial, light industrial, and a little bit of residential too. So you can have a good variety in here of uses, all mixed together. And this slide shows the options for that event center or garden court residential area. So you can see in the top there what those residences might look like. And then on the bottom, just some representative images of some of those moderate event centers. That live work district, again, these are units where you would have maybe office space on the lower level, and then you live in the top 2 floors of your unit, or you have a shop or that sort of thing in the same building where you live. And then transitioning out to the river, that river oriented commercial and recreation. So you can see kind of some of these lighter, more low impact uses, outfitters, dining, even maybe some riverfront lodging on a small scale. General commercial uses, your typical like grocery stores, coffee shops. And then the highway commercial there on the north side of 84, again, like gas stations, your lumber stores, car dealerships, which you already have one up there. And then the 2 pure residential areas that we were talking about, the low density at 2 to 6 or 2 to 5 units per acre, and then medium at 6 to 15 units per acre. So we just wanted to have a quick chat about responses to the land use concept. And maybe let's not worry about doing breakout groups on this. Let's just talk as a group, and everybody online, everybody just kind of chime in, whether you want to online and you want to just type something in the chat, or if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and join the conversation. We'd love to hear.
Lisa, we already have some comments in the chat. It sounds like the event center is a popular idea.
Okay.
A couple of people chimed in that they liked that idea. They would also like to see an amphitheater for future events to support arts, music, theater. And then there was a question if there's enough population or rooftops needed to support this kind of additional commercial and retail growth. This would provide a clearer, if there was a study, that would provide a clearer picture of the necessity or the need for housing to support this kind of a downtown expansion.
Hey, did you want to chime in on that?
Yes. So we have looked into the the projected number of housing units. You'll actually be seeing those numbers on the next couple of slides. And we have some estimates on commercial square footage that can be sustained by the growth that we are projecting. I didn't include those numbers in the presentation. I can get that to Lisa to share if that's something that people would like to see. But yes, we do have that information, and it will be included in the plan. So yes, good question.
So I think this is probably a good time to talk about what we came for because of the map you put up. The earlier map where you have the city boundaries and then the annexation boundaries is one of the very first maps. Yes, that map right there. And I've talked to we've been working on a project over by the gun range with the city, and they suggested we come to this meeting to talk about this. There are some concerns about the annexation boundary, that you can't just make that anywhere, that the city has to be able to provide services. You know, they don't want to expand that annexation boundary in directions they can't provide services and can't go. The property that we are working on is not in the annexation boundary, and we'd like to request that that be included in the annexation boundary. The city can provide services for it, for half of it, and there is no danger really for it to go any farther to the north because the city can't provide services. And so there may be other places around the city where the annexation boundary needs to be just double checked and make sure there aren't these little weird little pockets of land that the city can provide services for, but aren't included. Because without being in the annexation boundary, we cannot annex into Morgan City. And the way it sits right now in the county, it's 160 acres per unit. So it is literally a piece of property with houses around it that could never be developed unless it was annexed in. And there may be other places like that on that annexation boundary that if it's not taken care of now, well, it'll be another 10 years before it can be done. So I would just suggest we take a look at that, and on the project that we're working on right east of the gun range, we do request that that be included in the annexation boundary so that we can take care of that and the city can provide services for it. That was it.
Hi, I'm in the back of the room. Kansas is my name. I think just in general, because when looking at the county plan as well, I think to his point really is there's kind of this disconnect between landowners and the county plan, and yet what's best for the community, but also the landowners may or may not want to do. And it's hard for Landmark because they can't meet with 3,000 landowners, right? And so, but do they talk to some people like in the Peterson area? Not any of the landowners who had large chunks of ground had been, had a way to communicate or work with Landmark to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking or not wanting. And look, for the next 80 years, this is never going to be developed. So for you to put high density on my ground, it's never going to happen. So it doesn't really work for your plan versus, hey, I really do want to develop my ground, but I see it in a similar. And so it's how do you bridge that gap of landowners wants, community wants, and what's best for everyone. But that landowner not having a say, I think is a big concern.
Is there Ty or would Lisa, would you address that, or is that something just to note? And
So I think I just comment on what the general plan accomplishes. I have a mic. So anything that it's currently zoned, this doesn't change the zoning. It's just like the way future. So what it does is say, okay, if you want to rezone, then here's your menu of options, right? But we didn't just arbitrarily change your zoning. And so there's a secondary process, I think, where it really drills down into like on our city map, to be honest, that's a lot of information to digest that we've never even considered zones that we don't even know what they mean. Or, you know what I mean? Like land uses, not zones. So when we go to create those zones, and there's still a lot of opportunity to say, what do we want that to include and not include as far as actual land uses. And so there's, like you mentioned, it's a lot of visioning and a lot of just looking way down the road planning and hopefully a lot more discussions along the way.
Yeah, this is Paul Stringer again, and we are the landowners and in the trust, the family trust that owns the property that Todd Strong was just talking about. You're right. You're talking about the disconnect and trying to make those properties well known. I'm the inheritor of all the family documents, so this is, I believe, our 6th time trying to get this property into a pre-annexation thing. So there were some things that we found out along the way here that we probably weren't following within the process that's here. So Todd has been diligent at working with the city to follow that. And so this is the last piece of a trust of my mother-in-law. I'm married to the Jackson's oldest daughter. So, you know, we have worked with the city on a lot of developments. The grocery store sits on land that was ours. The commercial development behind that is sitting on land that was ours. But this one's been a tougher nut, trying to take it away from agricultural and turn it residential. But currently where we're sitting is we have, houses that are built all the way up the hill on the west side. We have the care center right there. And we also have the development that is exactly underneath of us. So we actually touch another development that is there going in below us. And so we can add on to that. So we would appreciate, the city's looking at that and trying to add us to that map and help us to bring this trust to an end, and do that. But the Jackson family has provided some key properties to the city, and this one, there is no other real use. We run some sheep on it, we run some horses on it, but it's a dry environment where you have to bring water to it. It's not sightly land, and so it'd be terrific. It would look better as a home development than it does now. So anyway, we're just hoping that you work with Todd and our family, but our wishes are to get this taken care of and turn it into something the city can use and create that tax base that we talked about earlier tonight in the county building, in the county meeting. Thank you.
Lisa, we have an additional comment in the chat. D&D says, it was a bit of a shock to see the pictures that were displayed about potential housing and mixed use in the future. This would be a major shift for our small community. In the prior meeting, the comments shared were a general sentiment of avoiding looking like Park City and all areas along the Wasatch Front. And so it sounds like D&D feels like these don't accomplish that, and that these are a little out of proportion.
Okay. Okay, any other thoughts on land use before we move into housing and then transportation? And thank you everyone for your comments and your input tonight. We appreciate all of it. Get back to, okay.
Okay, so that question about housing, this is just showing us what is currently existing within your city. You have that population of about 4,200, and with the housing stock that was in place, at the end of 2020, you had enough housing for with the household average household size from the census, you had enough housing for about 4,400 people. So you have about 1,343 housing units right now. Let's go to the next slide. So by 2040, you'll have that population of about 9,118 is what's projected. And to provide housing for that many individuals, you will need an additional 1,460 units. So something to keep in mind with this is one of those guiding principles that we have is that clustered development. And yes, you can see there is a little bit more concentrated areas, but the goal and focus of that is to keep other areas more rural and to keep that sense of Morgan, that agricultural sense and feel there, while supplying the rooftops that are needed to provide that tax base and to promote some additional services and development on the economic side. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So these are some of the different unit per acre counts that are proposed for some of the different land use sizes. I just want to point out that in a typical townhouse community, you could see a townhome in the 15 units per acre range. So these aren't incredibly dense. The 6 units per acre, you could probably find some single family homes. They'd be pretty small, but you know, that's kind of the range of the size of home that you're looking at there. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Great.
So what does everyone think about housing and the direction? Do you think, what do you think about concentrating it into these centers? And we did have some feedback on kind of the look of some of those units, that those maybe don't match the rural farming feel. And is there, you know, a trade-off between kind of focusing maybe some of those uses in particular locations, but then keeping that more rural feel elsewhere in the county? Anybody has thoughts? And that's okay if we don't. Let's just jump right into transportation then, with Catherine.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. So again, just a quick refresher, guiding principle 6 is about improving the safety and connectivity of roads in the community. And so looking at this slide, safety citywide in Morgan City, there, you see kind of these themes play through of accommodating people using alternative modes safely on the roads, but without conflicting with vehicles. These are like separate trails, bike lanes, those sorts of things, but also it's taking a look at some of the more hazardous streets, performing like road safety audits on some of the more dangerous ones, or, frankly, developing a safety plan. Another way to help improve safety is to reduce the legal speed limit or the design speed downtown or wherever you've got large groups of people walking. And so if you'll go to the next slide, let's kind of connect, or let's bring this through with connectivity in Morgan. And in essence, I mean, it's one of the ways to improve and increase the connectivity is to complete the sidewalk network, or have, some of these kind of informal trails formalized. And, looking at things like access management and connectivity focused policies and standards, trying to essentially prevent congestion and bottlenecking in certain areas, and as well as working to develop kind of this active transportation element, but in the same way that, in essence, providing multiple routes for people to get where they need to go, be it in a car, walking, bike, whatever. And so if we go to the next slide, I just kind of want to go through with this information fresh in your mind, just some of the measures and mitigations and just the different options that are available for dealing with traffic calming, safety, connectivity, and honestly, even pedestrian crossings. So starting with the common safety countermeasures, these are useful in places like Morgan City, looking at things like, you know, the roadside design, maybe more efficient striping, dedicated right and left turn lanes, kind of prevent those conflict points at intersections, you know, accidents and things, corridor access management, medians and pedestrian crossing islands on wide roads. And, you know, again, looking at the speed limit of the road and just kind of how the road feels to drive on and what you can do to keep people from going 90 miles an hour on a road that's, you know, set for 25 miles an hour. And so if you go to the next slide, this kind of goes into our traffic calming toolbox that we've got. These are kind of different mitigations to help with traffic calming, and, you know, they're all kind of situation and area dependent, but these are great ways to keep congestion under control. A lot of these, you know, you've got the speed feedback signs, speed bumps, those sorts of things that they're pretty common. And there are a few that aren't quite as common. These like slow turn wedges, bulb outs, line striping, those sorts of things that can just kind of make the road feel like a road that people wouldn't speed on. I know it sounds a little nuts, but just make a road feel more friendly to people who are, again, walking, biking, riding horses, non-standard means of transportation. And so we've got these options, but kind of digging down into the details here. If you go to the next slide, we talk a lot about pedestrian safety, or, you know, honestly, student safety, walking to and from school, and the congestion that can occur near the schools as well. And so I kind of wanted to go through just a little bit of the connectivity element of this, where essentially, so the state of Utah has this really great resource. It's called the Utah Connectivity Guide, and it has these tailor-made approaches to improving the connectivity for the unique cities and towns in Utah. These kind of go through the different elements of, you know, ways to improve the connectivity without ripping up whole swaths of land. You know, these are looking at multiple connections, direct connections, balancing your street grid with the dead ends and cul-de-sacs, and creating more access to thoroughfares, as well as, again, different ways to get to the same place. And so we've got, like I said, a few of these here. If we go to the next slide, let's kind of, what I wanted to just kind of a little more detail here was pedestrian and street crossings. You know, a lot of people, it's just sort of you just put some striping on a road and we're good, but there are actually many different kinds and many different situations in which they're very appropriate. So for instance, so Salt Lake County uses the continental style or the zebra style or the ladder style around school zones. And the reason for that is because they're far more visible. Those crosswalks are far more visible to cars upon approach. For anything outside of school zones, it's often just that standard striping you see kind of second from the left. And they work, but they're just not quite as visible. And so these, you know, there are various different options that can be used, that can be implemented. Each one has its pros and cons. And then getting into like the crossing itself, these are for intersections that have needs for people to cross the roads, but maybe aren't right near a school that would be eligible for, say, a crossing guard. So we have the standard crossing. It's just some striping on a road with a sign, as you see on the left. But there are also a couple others. There's what we call a hawk crossing. It's a high intensity activated crosswalk. It's essentially, it's got those big red flashing lights at the top. If you have a pedestrian or a cyclist or somebody, they just go up, push a button, the lights flash, and it tells oncoming traffic to stop. And so then that person can cross the street safely, and then everyone kind of goes about their day. The next one we have is for areas where you've got maybe a lot of people who need to cross, but only at certain times of the day. And so, you know, you've got things like these rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Again, it's similar, it's just a smaller scale version of the Hawk where you push a button, these really obnoxious lights come on that just let oncoming traffic know that somebody wants to cross and so that they need to stop. They then stop, the person crosses the street, you know, everything's there. My favorite is the Pegasus crossing. It is a multimodal crossing. It is really good in areas where you've got people walking and biking, riding horses, ATVs, anything that's kind of a non-standard, not a vehicle. And it allows each one to cross safely and without having these conflicts between the different modes of transportation. And so these are, like I said, this is kind of just a very broad overview of what's possible. Each has their own pros and cons and, you know, situations in which they're the most appropriate. But, you know, it's just saying that even at this stage, there is so much that's possible. And so, again, we can kind of go more in depth on these later if you've got questions, you know, we can go on and discuss it. But I mean, that's kind of what I've got in a nutshell.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of the information Catherine shared?
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Could we go back almost to your first slide that you that had the map on it? Yeah, right there. And so right there, Commercial Street in Maine is one of your gateways. And you have access into commercial, and then you are also looking at then proposing or creating a frontage street. And with the narrowing of that road and the queue times to go left and right, and then the narrowing underneath the interstate, that should we circle that as a priority? Now I'll defer, of course, to Ty for transportation corridor planning, but it would seem like that would have to be fixed before we could, or at least addressed before we want to start doing commercial growth or building out a frontage road, because that will definitely be a choke point.
No, that's a great point, James, for sure. That's and that's a lot of this is kind of, you know, figuring out what needs to be prioritized, what needs to happen first in these areas. And that yeah, it is. I think that's one of the areas where Catherine found a high level of accidents kind of around those narrow intersections.
So I know that, again, when we look at Lehigh and we look at Layton and Antelope, you know, a lot of those intersections were not designed with the future in mind. And I think that there's some great planning here and great insight. But that transportation corridor would definitely have to be addressed before I think we start moving on any of those potential build outs or commercial zones. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any other thoughts or concerns on transportation?
Lisa?
Yeah.
Back to that map. Could you go back there again?
Oh, you bet.
You had indicated in the prior meeting that this addresses the Island Road situation. So thank you for bringing that out. And I think if I'm seeing this right, I don't know if you can zero in on that. It's kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
But it seems like you've got a road crossing. I thought you said 600 North. Yeah.
Yeah, so by this water treatment facility, it kind of wraps around and it would require a bridge over the river.
Okay.
And then crossing at Island Road there.
And then it also connects into Morgan Valley Drive. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and let me actually go to a different map that shows it a little better.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, here we go. Okay. So 600 North comes under water treatment facility, and then it comes down by I believe it was by the equestrian property in there, the equestrian center. And then it would need to cross the creek, East Canyon Creek. And then here's that property that the school is in the process of buying or trying to buy. And that was one thing I didn't mention too, that they have this property and that it might be a good opportunity to co-locate a future neighborhood park in that vicinity. But transportation wise, trying to get that connectivity through there, and then also making sure that some of these connections are made to existing roads as
Yeah.
well.
Yes, okay. Thank you. That's helpful. And then down by the Morgan schools, the existing schools, that's
Yes.
where you have that bridge project, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I agree that that needs to be an urgent project as well. Thank
Ty,
you.
do you know the timing on the bridge project?
Yeah, it was done last year. It just hasn't shown up yet. So yeah, ongoing, we're just starting phase 2 of engineering. So we're like 2 years out, but I've been saying 2 years out for 2 years. So it's a new UDOT thing that I've never been through. So it's just a whole process and tons of detail and stuff that I didn't anticipate. So anyway, getting closer, a couple years out.
Sorry, I just have to comment as a homeowner, not as Wanda, Ty's assistant. You can go back to Island Road. I just have a question.
Yeah.
How will that, okay, so I see where there's 2 accesses coming onto Island Road. What then is the plan for Island Road to be able to handle that additional school traffic, the traffic that wants, I don't understand how, that's just my very preschool brain with planning. Like I said, I'm new, but even just as a homeowner, what is this plan showing would happen to Island Road? Thank you.
Catherine, do you want to speak to that?
So, I mean, at this point, a lot of these, we don't really have a good idea as to sort of what will happen with what am I trying to say here? In essence, it's kind of difficult to predict at this point approximately how many cars and how wide this road would need to be to accommodate the growth from the school and so, I mean, in essence, this is a little fluid. It's, it'll be likely to change. There will likely be some studies on Island Road to figure out what will happen, what will happen to, like you said, to support the traffic, to handle the extra volume. And also with some of these trails and things that are also coming online, what was the other trails and a few of these bike facilities that are coming online, kind of what will those impacts be on Island Road, and what will, I mean, there are just a lot of questions at this point that they're difficult to answer in a lot of detail, but it's something that we've got in our list of things to consider for next steps and for the future when we hit these points. What are the elements, what are the problems that we'll be encountering in essence?
And I think you raise a great point, Wanda, that it's, the full network has to be studied, by adding some of these roadways in, you have to study the full impact, and that's kind of next steps.
Thank you so much. I think also it's such a huge concept. And so I know we're from a super high level, and it probably won't even be in my lifetime. So, but still, it still makes my mind go, huh? So thank you for accommodating my silliness, but I appreciate it.
No, that's great. I mean, the idea behind that road is to help ease some of the pressure that is on Island Road already. So trying to get some other outlets and get some better flow through that area.
So some of the issues we're talking about, out there quite a few years, but a lot of the issues that are on the future planning are issues today. Some of the problems that that we're talking about, the congestion off the exit from the freeway and turning up, trying to turn either direction. Those kinds of, you know, it just wasn't, I hate to say, but the city of Morgan wasn't kind of planned for growth. It was kind of planned in the, let's not go, I don't mean to be facetious, but horse and buggy days. And the growth that's going on, and I'm looking in 1,460 new units with a population of, you know, 3.24 or 3.5 people in a house. How many cars that puts on the road. And so I'm just wondering if there is a way to dissect this as it's needed now instead of 2040. And that's, I think, one of the bigger issues is we have problems already, and if we grow, we got horrible problems. My thoughts.
Catherine, do any of those RPO projects that were in the county portion, do any of those address some of these issues?
Some of them do, yeah. If
let me go back to that. Sorry, everybody, I'll try not to. There we go. Okay.
Great. There are a few of these are from the Morgan and Ogden Valley Regional Planning Organization, their long range transportation plan. And what that is it looks at the next 30 years, but has a list of these projects that are things that will alleviate, that will hopefully help alleviate a lot of these issues much sooner. So if you look, like phase 1 is in the next, what will happen in the next 10 years. And a lot of these are already started or in, you know, as Lance said, in the works. They're just, you know, sometimes UDOT is slow, or, you know, there's different new processes, things like that. But a few of these, there are things that are in this plan, the regional plan, forgive me, that are addressing those issues now, and they are, they're coming down the line. It's just sometimes that they can be a little bit slow, but these are to help meet the immediate needs.
So it looks like some of those shorter term are some access management and stacking lanes up to Lost Creek, that Young Street Bridge, which Ty was talking about, hopefully will happen sometime in the next 2 years. That additional interchange at Mountain Green with the extension of SR 167. And then it looks like a little bit of road widening on SR 66. 84 to Landmark Lane. So there are some that are hopefully going to happen sooner rather than later to help alleviate some of these problems. And then, as Catherine mentioned, you know, they've proposed some specific projects within the county and then also within the city. We'll go back to the city maps. A lot of material here. So they have proposed some specific projects to address both safety and connectivity. And, you know, if you want to take a look through these and see if, you know, we've missed any of these specific projects that may need some attention sooner rather than later, we would appreciate that feedback.
You know, could I bounce in here for a second? And you know, I think this has been great discussion. But I think sometimes there's a feeling that this type of planning or the concepts of more focused growth in certain areas is kind of an encouragement for development or encouragement for growth. And what I'm seeing is more of a mitigation of the growth that we know we're going to have, and what's the best way to have the least amount of impact to what the community wants as far as how rural we maintain this rural atmosphere. And so I don't really see a tremendous amount of encouragement or from economic development to bring people in here other than tourism and outdoor recreation, which is really bringing them in and then having them leave. But I think we've just got to be aware that the growth is going to happen naturally, just because of natural growth patterns, and how can we mitigate it the very most, rather than maybe a feeling that we're trying to do development and bring people here. That's just a thought I had as you were.
No, that's a great point. And it's been a lot of the public feedback up to this point has been, get people to come and spend their money and then leave. Yeah,
Oh, hi,
great.
Lisa, I own the land that is being referred to as a garden court residential area. And so this is all completely new to me. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on the schematic that you have, and it looks like there's a road or I can't understand exactly what you have. Would you mind elaborating on that?
You bet. Let me go back to that area here. So, okay, so this whole district that's outlined in this dashed green line is kind of designated as a recreation and events district on the concept. So you have a close tie to the downtown area with the schools and the civic district, the fairgrounds, Como, and maybe this future regional park. And the idea is that, this site could potentially house some of those, that alternative housing type, or it could be an event center. And I think, so these aren't roads. This is just kind of this whole green area would be that use. These are just overlapping districts and different descriptions of uses that will be fleshing out in the general plan, like this civic district here kind of overlaps with that events district. This is Young Street here going to the Young Street Bridge. And then there are some potential green corridors connecting to other roadways or existing trails within the community. So that's the idea. It's just, and this isn't intended to be a specific, like this is exactly where this corridor goes. It's just the general plan is intended to be kind of visionary. And then like Lance said, when you get down to that zoning level, that's where you start making decisions about where specific uses are allowed. What does that form look like? Your zoning regulations spell out a lot of that detail.
I just want to give some feedback that I feel like Young Street is a unique, especially that area by the school and where the bridge will be a major thoroughfare. I think there needs to be some, really good planning, because that's a well-trafficked area in Morgan. That will be, where people go for games and they'll go over that bridge. I think I would like to see more discussion about, what would fit best, especially along the frontage for Young Street, to maybe fit the needs of the community, and also have a look that also, kind of meets our goals of, having a rural look as opposed to just, high density housing. I think right along the border of Young Street would be horrific to look at. I'm going to live in the house by that. I would not want to look at that. I would not want all the people visiting Morgan and going through that roadway to see, just high density homes or townhomes parked up against Young Street.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback. So have you been giving thought to what you've been planning or thinking about in that area?
Okay. Well, I think it might be logical to have something mixed use along Young Street, because we have a congregation of cars coming in for games, coming in for different things. I don't know if mixed use along the frontage would make sense, and then do something, behind that that's more of the garden concept. And I don't know, Morgan definitely needs some type of event center. And I'm just wondering, I think, we have the Trojan Center. We have some specific areas that already offer events. And so I'm wondering what the best use for an event center would be, since we do have some other facilities that the community could use.
Okay.
But I do agree that we need one. I'm curious to know what the specific focus of that would be.
Yeah, and I think that's still, definitely up for discussion, what would make the most sense here. In our focus groups with, I believe one of them, we had some equestrian representatives that were talking about, the desire to attract some of those indoor events. And with the proximity to the rodeo grounds, that type of a use might make sense, but also trying to have something that's flexible enough to accommodate other uses that are needed in the community. But I really appreciate your feedback about what the uses that front Young Street there. That's great feedback.
Just to add on to that, this is Ty. When the bridge goes in, it's gonna open a window from the freeway because we're gonna be losing trees. That's gonna be a highly visible roadway, Young Street. You'll see right down it and all the frontage as well. So just a side note. So look and feel, I guess look and feel isn't necessarily when you're driving down the street. It's gonna be when you're driving down the freeway, you'll see a lot more than what's currently visible, I think.
Okay, I was just gonna comment that if we do get an event center, which I also agree we need, then the Trojan Center could go back to being used mainly for athletics and bring in some extra income for our school district by renting that out when our own school is not using it.
I have a quick question, I think, for Catherine. And could we go back to that one map of the city real quickly? This dovetails into what we've just been talking about, that area over there with the new bridge and okay, right, yeah, right, maybe right there. The new bridge and so right there between your two, what did you call them? That one and the one to the north, that right there.
Yeah, between these nodes.
There's a frontage road there that used to be, correct me if I'm wrong, you natives, that used to be a two-way street, a two-way road. I've thought a lot about this and I thought, maybe I'm crazy, but to me, opening that area up by the bus garage with that bridge at that end of town, it makes a lot of, at least to me, it makes sense to create that frontage road into a two-lane road again. And one of the reasons I feel that way is because it also has to do with the rock quarry, the new rock quarry. So those trucks are coming in empty on that frontage road, which is one way. They're turning the corner there. They're going up by the hitching post. They're coming out of that quarry and they're exiting the city on 600 East through some residential area, up a bit of residential area. Just wondered if it makes sense to turn that frontage road right there into a two-way street again.
That's a really interesting point, and I'll be honest, I don't have an answer right now, but this is, I've written it down, and honestly, I'm going to first thing tomorrow morning run the model and see what happens. That's a really great idea. Thank you.
The reason I bring it up is because that end of town with this bridge, with the Wilkinson complex, with the high school, with the bus garage, with the rock quarry, that's going to get busy. And I'm just wondering if it doesn't make sense to make that a two-way road. Just a thought.
Oh, thank you. It's very interesting, and I'm definitely going to go through and consider it. Thank you.
So Tony, I've been thinking about the same thing. That the only issue I wonder about is with the traffic coming off the exit there and entering, and that frontage road right in the middle of it. How do we negotiate a two-way street? I've thought the same purpose, the same thing, but it's that is a bottleneck that's almost impossible as we speak now, the way it is. And if we have a truck now or vehicles trying to turn left or to exit onto the I-84, I think that's a great idea. I just wonder what we would do in that small area to get traffic to get through there.
There's a lot happening there, plus with the railroad and yeah. Okay, well, it sounds like Catherine will give that some further study. Kate, did you want to talk about economics specifically for the city?
I'll just quickly say that the two-pronged approach is really important, you know, for the county and the city, and focusing on not just providing local services to you as residents, but also looking at providing opportunities for tourism, focusing on marketing to outside the county, so that people will come spend their dollars, increase your tax base, and then leave. That's a big opportunity for you. So our focus is to look at providing more local services for the future, and then opportunities where the recreation services could be expanded. So there is some overlap there, restaurants, additional restaurants, small scale retail, and other services. That would be our focus there. No big box.
No big box, and then building off of kind of those unique opportunities with that historic downtown, the railroad. You guys have some really cool amenities already down there that the city owns now. And then figuring out how to tie that water recreation into everything, because that's part of what we heard about, you know, all these people coming up and, you know, biking on the roads or going on the river, but they actually aren't stopping and spending any money in town. So maybe, you know, providing a little more options and other ways to lure them in. And then I think, you know, that point that was brought up earlier about how to get locals to spend money in the community, because that's a big problem. Like we heard so many people that live in Mountain Green just go right down the mountain, and you know, some of them don't even know that Morgan City exists. So how do you tie the county together a little more, and how do you really push that local support of your community? These are all issues that need to be addressed.
And then Lisa, piggybacking on that tourism note, a little bit more about the event center. The event center becomes a driver for local retailers, hotel, restaurant, as a business generator through state, local, regional events. They'll bring out of town attendees to spend their dollars in the community, and then they go home, and this would be the key point, allowing Morgan to stay rural without needing to depend on high property taxes to support public service costs.
Recreation, I don't know how much we need to touch on here. Again, that two-pronged approach, local short-term, or the short-term approach is kind of these street side trails on the major roads, trying to get the short-term solution, getting bike lanes, maybe a paved separated trail that's either adjacent or slightly separated from the roadway. That would be the short-term approach in these areas that you're seeing in the orange dashed lines. And then long-term vision way down the road, but you can start chipping away now, is to secure these off-street trail corridors along like East Canyon Creek, along the Weeper River, maybe some of these irrigation canals that connect some of these areas, and just tying in these recreation destinations. Again, the regional park, the fairgrounds, connecting that down to Riverside Park, and another future park over here on the other side by the new downtown district. How to tie in, you know, to your other features that you already have, and some potential features maybe up here with a future trail system on this land that the city already owns. You know, it's pretty steep and maybe somewhat restricted in what can be added there. And just a quick note too, one of the things that's being negotiated, the possibilities, is exchanging, doing a little bit of a land swap or land access swap, so that the gravel pit may be able to mine further up into some public lands in exchange for allowing public access to say, some of this public land is inaccessible, and that was brought up earlier in our meeting. So trying to open up those opportunities to get the public into some of these areas that right now it's landlocked by private landowners. So that's one possibility too for recreation, and then just capitalizing on all your unique amenities in the community.
So Lisa, I have just a comment on that.
Yeah.
That public land, one of the things we learned, it's the wildlife management area, so it's not, even though it's public land, the funds that were used to purchase that land were to protect wildlife. And so whatever public access is gained would be pretty limited. So just a side note, so it wouldn't be a recreation area. The state would violate the terms under which they acquired the land.
Oh, interesting.
Their top priority is for wildlife protection. And so that's just as something that, like everything, you see something on the map and we get all excited because it's like, hey, we see some public land if we could just get access to it. But they're under some pretty strict management guidelines for that as well. So probably trails and some limited things, but not as much recreation maybe as people envision.
Yeah, it's definitely not Forest Service land. I was looking at some of the regulation signs on some of the other WMAs in the area, and it's seasonally restricted, based on when the animals are kind of, when they're breeding, when they're having all of those important events that need to be protected. And so the time of access and then the type of access, was very limited in some of those. So that makes sense that this would be restricted as well. Okay, any other last thoughts on any of the topics we've discussed tonight?
So I just have a general comment over the new Flex District.
Yeah.
New downtown and Flex District. I think that will accommodate a lot of future growth that we hadn't contemplated before. So as far as land use, I think that's a much better use of space than the current manufacturing zone or area that's there. So including residential in the mix in that area, I think just mentally for me relieves a lot of growth anxiety, because that's a potentially great use of that space compared to manufacturing that takes tons of space, heavy truck traffic, and very low benefit to the community. So that's just a comment, overall comment from the peanut gallery.
I guess I can just talk briefly about the next steps of the project. So the idea is now to take all of this feedback into consideration and see what adjustments we need to make. And then we'll be diving into the development of the draft plan. So trying to tie all of these ideas together into separate plans for the city and the county. But as Lance mentioned, these efforts are pretty closely tied together. So we want to make sure that everything is working well between the two plans and that the visions are supportive of each other and they build off of each other. So there will definitely be some cross-referencing, and so we'll be definitely getting the word out to you when the draft plan is available for review. So stay tuned. And again, make sure to sign up on that sign-in sheet that is available in the room if you want to leave your email address. If you're not already signed up for our email list, then I would love to add you if you want to stay up to date on the project. But we'll keep you up to date. And again, if you feel like there's something that you want to express that you haven't been able to, I know that some of the long-term landowners feel like they haven't had a chance to kind of chime in on everything. And so I know it's definitely hard to kind of reach every corner of the community that really should be providing input. So if you have any additional thoughts that you want to give that you feel like you haven't been able to up to this point, we would love to hear from you. So please keep sharing and reaching out. So, visit the website, morgan2050.org, to keep up to date. And that's where we'll be uploading the recording of the video and the notes from the meeting and the materials that, this presentation will go up on the project website as well. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. We know there are a lot of other things you'd rather be doing with your time. So thank you for coming out and providing your feedback and participating. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks so much,
Thanks
everyone.
everyone for attending.